Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Bobby Sharp, and this is what I call the Made by Hand shop. Today's episode, I'm going to show you how I make drawers. And there's a jig that goes along with this. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, before I start cutting any of the joinery for the drawers, let me explain. This is a locking rabbet joint jig. And here's a picture of what a locking rabbet joint looks like. And this jig helps you accomplish cutting that dado and the tenon for the other mating part. Now this is the tenon portion of the jig, and this is the dado portion of the jig. I have opted to use the router to cut the tenon part, and I'm going to use this jig and this portion to cut the dado. All right, and obviously we have a left and a right cut on this, and these blocks move up and down. The rear stop here is to cut this shoulder closest to the edge, and the other stop is to cut the shoulder that's farther away from the end. Let me get the actual piece, make sure that I have it on the right side, and we'll make this rabbet. And one other adjustment with this jig is the height of the blade above this surface here, because this, we'll call this the table. That determines how deep the dado is. I'm using a flat ground blade here, so it's not an alternating tooth blade where it has a point one direction and a point the other direction. It's ground flat, so I get a nice flat surface in there from the blade. You can set this part up to do the tenon, but like I said, I'm going to do my tenons on the router table, so we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these, and then I'll come back. Now, one of the great things about this jig is it's repeatable. So all I have to do is take this, hang it back on the wall, and when I come back to this, if I'm using the same thickness material, all I have to do is set the blade height and make those cuts. If I'm using the same thickness of material, or you want the same locking rabbet joint joinery in your pieces. If you don't, then you just set it up for the next cut. I have wasted about an hour trying to set the tenon part up. I need to go back and look at the video and find out what I'm doing wrong. So I just set up my router table. So these are the sides to the table, to the drawer, excuse me. And now I'm going to cut the ends, and the ends are going to have the tenons on them so that they pull against the sides on the drawer. So I have all my parts laid out. I've marked where I want the groove to be in the bottom and what face it needs to be oriented on. So I've marked those, I've oriented them, so I just pull them off and run them through. And this is a two-step process. There'll be this first cut. I'll need to adjust the fence for the thickness of the material that's going to form the bottom, and we'll run them all through again. All right, those look really good. I'm gonna have a little bit of a cleanup on the bottom here, but that's okay. This is only 2 drawers that we're making. I'll get these cleaned up. So the next question is, how do we determine the size of our bottom panel, or the panel that will make up the bottom of the drawer? Well, one of those is very easy because it is the end with the tenons on it, or the piece with the tenons, because the tenons go into the bottom of the groove on the sides of the other adjacent side of the box. We just simply measure that, and that is just a hair shy of 20 inches. So I'm going to write that down. And then, since that goes to the bottom of the groove, then we can measure the outside of our dados. So in other words, from the outside of this dado to the outside of this dado. And that measurement is 21 7/16. Now, I'm going to cut these a little bit large, and then we're going to take my hand plane and make sure they're square. If they're not square, I can square them with the hand plane by some techniques there. And then I will give it a little bit of a clearance. It is plywood. This is plywood. And just so you know, this is the 1/2 inch plywood from Home Depot. They call it sandy ply, something like that. I use this. It's pretty lightweight. It's very stable. It does not warp. It's only 3 ply with a veneer on each side, and the veneer is pretty thin, but it's just some good stuff. It's $45 a sheet, something like that. So I'm going to cut some 6mm plywood into these dimensions, and we'll come back and see how they do a dry fit, see how they fit, and make some adjustments if we have to. All right, I did a light sanding of all the parts inside and out, top and bottom. And let's do a dry fit and see how well this fits together. So I have one side that has all the dados in it facing up. And I'll put this piece in, lining up the grooves, the dados on the ends. All right, then we'll place one of the sides in, the other side. And then the other piece with all the dados in it. And this should lock everything together. And it does. All right. Let's see how square this is. All right, I think we can live with that. I can square that up. All right, so let's take this back apart and glue it together. Yes, I'm going to try and glue it together on camera here. I have found in the past that the problem is I always make these joints too tight, and therefore it's really hard once you get glue on it. It's really hard to get it to go together because the glue makes it sticky and all that good stuff, and the pieces are tight, and it's just really hard to get it back together. Not only that, some of the parts, like this plywood, is not flat, so there, and then there's that. So all I'm doing is putting the glue in the dados. And then some on the shoulder here. I'll show you on the top, or the last piece, when we get that together. All right, so now we're going to fill all the dados in. And then I put it on the shoulder here. And we lay that on here. All right, there it went in. I've got some clamps ready here. Let's see, this one goes over here. I don't put a whole lot of pressure on the clamps just to kind of hold it together, because these particular clamps tend to make the sides that this piece is on bow in. So this is really just to hold it together and keep it from moving. All right, I like that. I'm gonna let this sit and dry, and then the finish that I'm gonna put on this is gonna be just a water-based polyurethane. So before I do that though, I'll come back and round over these top lips here and dress those up a little bit. That's some really fine sanding. You can do the outside pretty quickly, but when you get to the inside, you got these corners and stuff, and I want to even up these joints on the ends and get those looking good as well. So there you go. That glue up went rather nicely. All right, I have got the top of the sides sanded on this one here, and the side that the face is going to be screwed to, I just round the inside, not the outside. That way stuff doesn't get between the side and the face. You know, if it's food or anything like that, rice, anything that, flour, sugar, anything that might be stored in the drawer, it's just a lot easier to be able to clean that out there. If I can get that up there, see that? Here's another corner. They're nice and tight. You can also see how the edge looks there. It really feels good to your hand. And just compare it to just a regular old square edge. Well, I appreciate you stopping by the shop today and checking out this video on how I make my drawers using a locked rabbet dado joint. These two drawers are actually for another project, and if you would hit that subscribe button so that you will be notified of future videos that I have coming out. Well, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next build.